Hello, Carrara animators. This is Cyborg Ty with another tutorial. In fact, this is a quick response to a question that was posted in a forum on the Carrara website. One of the members there asked a question about if anyone's used the MultiPass rendering capability in Carrara, and I indicated that I did and gave a quick example, and then this member decided that he'd ask for more detail on how to do the quick examples that I mentioned. So, I made a reference to, maybe taking advantage of the glow pass or taking advantage of the object index, which allows me to create object mats or object masks. And it appears this member actually does have a workflow that something that he does that helps him with that, but it may be more involved than what I'm about to show. I believe this member also uses After Effects. In fact, you need After Effects or one of the higher-end compositors. Last time I looked at HitFilm, it did not support RPF. So I figured that let's use a simple example to illustrate the two points I made. One was taking advantage of a glow pass. Another is taking advantage of object ID. Taking advantage of the object ID information that could be stored in an .rpf file allowed me to create mats for these two foreground objects, which allowed me to put this text, this Carrara text, behind them. So you notice I can actually slide it right down behind them, and it's still in front of the yellow and the green balls. In fact, all of the objects in the scene has object ID information stored within the .rpf file, and I just took advantage of those. And you notice in After Effects I've created layers, certain ones. In fact, if you look closely, you'll notice I have a layer for every object here. But this example is actually showing a still, and since I'm about animation and the site is also, I went back and actually animated that scene, and then just real simple animation. And then I went ahead and produced the output going into the rendering room, and the output tab here, went ahead and selected under MultiPass, selected the various different elements that I wanted. And you'll find that once you're here, you simply select Add, and you're able to select from a pull down. And you can multi-select items by holding down the Control key and then just selecting them. The ones that are selected will turn into a yellow color. But anyway, I've selected a list of items, and you'll see them here. And one of the things you'll find interesting is if I select each one of these elements, you'll notice down at the bottom under Element Options, it by default shows Embedded. If I select Depth, you'll see that shows Embedded. Fragment Color, you notice that's Embedded. Background, now notice that's External. Diffuse, you'll find if I selected any of these others, they actually are showing the radial dial External selected, and you'll note the Embedded is actually ghosted out, which means it's not an option. So what does that mean? That actually means if it's external, that there'll be an external sequence, a separate sequence for that pass, whereas if it's showed embedded, these items will be embedded within the same sequence. Object index, depth, and fragment color. All the rest of these will be in separate sequences. What you end up with is an interesting array of passes. This is an example of some of the passes you would see. This is from that one example where I had the still. You notice you've got a diffuse pass, ambient occlusion, global illumination. You get an idea of what some of these look like. And so what you do is, anyway, you take these passes into a compositor like After Effects, and it allows you to combine these using various different blending modes. It allows you to combine these to affect the final output to maybe get something that's somewhat like this. All right, so now we're gonna try to achieve this type of effect, but obviously with the animated version. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new composition with the primary RPF file. So I call it primary RPF file. This is the one that's really kind of what some programs would call the beauty pass. It's the one that's got everything, right? So however you had it set up in Carrara, however the materials were set up, that's how you're going to see them here. This pass is really what you guys normally would see. I know a lot of you use AVI file outputs, or you'll maybe pick one of the sequence file outputs, and that's your final output that you would maybe even upload to YouTube. So that's really what you've got here, and I'm calling the beauty pass. But you may have also noticed in the naming conventions, Carrara appends the pass name. So you notice if I call, in this case I call the files MultiPass balls underscore, but Carrara added underscore and whatever the pass was, right? So you can tell what each of the sequences are for. If it's got underscore ambient occlusion, that's the ambient occlusion pass. If it's got underscore glow, that's the glow pass. If it's got underscore shadow, that's the shadow pass, and so on. So our interest is in putting text between the blue and the yellow balls. All right, so what I'm going to do is here, I'm going to go ahead and type Carrara tour. Yeah, why not? And I'll highlight that, make it bigger. And maybe go back here, make go here, delete that layer. Let me go back here and kind of stretch that up a little bit, make it a little taller. Okay. So now you notice though, if I were to select that and move it, notice it's on top of everything, right? So even as I animate, that's not really what we're going for, right? So let's say our interest is in making sure it was behind or between the yellow and the blue balls. Okay, so let's do that. So to accomplish that, what we're going to use is we're going to use the ID mat effect that we have here. So I'm going to drag that. So this is what we've got in After Effects and other programs. I'm not sure what they've got. Now notice when I put this ID mat in here, everything went away. What that means is there's nothing assigned to ID selection 0. So if you look over here, you notice on there are the options. We have ID selection, we have feather, we have these others. So what's interesting is you'll find when we set to save object ID when we were rendering, it stored an ID number for every object in the scene. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to the ID selection. I'm going to just kind of drag it. And you notice as I drag through it, I'm not sure how this is showing up in the recording, you're seeing various different objects. The planes that I use as the floor and the walls. You're seeing the different balls are showing up as I step through these IDs. Okay. So we know we want this to be behind the blue ball, right? So let's start with that one. And in fact, what I'm going to also do is I'm going to copy this layer, and on the copy I'm going to go in here and I'm going to just turn off that effect. All right, so and what I'm going to do then is go back to this layer. I'm going to rename it blue ball. Let's call it blue ball. I'm now going to reorder the layers. So I'm going to take that text layer and put it underneath, and go back and make sure I know how to spell blue. Okay, and notice immediately the Carrara's text went right behind the blue ball, and as I move the timeline slider, you notice the animation occurs, and now you are seeing something strange, right? You notice that the red ball is still forcing the correct part of the Carrara text to be on front, right? So we need to also mat it as well. So let's go ahead, let's create another layer. I'm going to duplicate the base layer at the bottom. I'm going to rename that one and call it Beauty Pass. And this one here, now let's go ahead and let's see what we've got with that one. I'm going to isolate just that layer. and I'm going to activate the ID mat. And let's see. I'm going to step up. Let's see what's 5. Yeah, 5 happens to be the ID for the red ball. So let's go ahead and rename this layer red ball. And let's unsolo this layer. Let's make sure the red ball layer is above the text layer. And notice as soon as I do that, we have what's expected. The red ball and the blue ball stays in front of the Carrara text. Of course, the Carrara text could be some special effect, smoke or otherwise, that you want to have behind the two balls. With each ball on their own layer and matted out, we can actually apply effects directly to each of those layers, including doing something as basic as changing the colors. Maybe the red ball is a purple ball instead. Alright, so another question was regarding taking advantage of the glow pass. So of course I did get that, and that was a separate external file. So I'm going to bring that into the timeline. And in fact, I'm going to make sure I put it behind the text. Okay, put it behind the text. But I got a problem because of the way it came in. Notice it's got the black background along with what is the glow channel, right? So what I'm going to do here is change the blending mode to screen, and that takes care of that. So right now you'll say nothing's changed, but I can actually put various different effects on the glow channel, like maybe take advantage of the glow effect here in After Effects. We'll bring that just to the bring it to the glow channel. And notice once I've got it there, the effect is isolated to just what's on that layer. So obviously I can affect the radius, the intensity, whatever it is I want to have associated with the glow can be isolated very easily to that layer, since I rendered out a glow pass. Now, if you didn't do that, I'm sure some of you are probably sitting here thinking, "Oh, yeah, without knowing that, you have to do a motion tracking of that ball object in this tool, and then maybe, or in a video editor or whatever you're using, you'd have to do something like that, and then apply and maybe have a null object that's moving with that, or have a mask that's mapped to that motion, and then apply your glow effect to that. There's a lot more work. This was very easy, right? There weren't a lot of clicks involved. All right, so hopefully, this was a very simple example, but I think you kind of get it. When you look at these MultiPass renderers, there's a lot you can do with them. For example, take a look at something like this, where this is a still, but notice here, let's say you've rendered out whether it's a still or an animation, and you decided, well, maybe I've got too much shadow. Well, you have full control of that, because if you look at the passes I've got here, I've got so many different ones. I've got ambient occlusion, depth, diffuse, glow channel, and even in this example, shadow. But anyway, with all of these here, if I, for example, as I was getting into, if I got too much shadow, I could bring that down. Notice as you look through the list of layers, I've got various different blending modes. On this one, I happen to have a multiply blending mode, and of course I've got it layered on top of a diffuse. But anyway, you can bring all the shadows out, you can bring it back in slowly until you get what you like. Maybe you don't like the like we were talking about, the glow. You still have that control. You can take that all the way out. Notice in this case you have nothing. You have really just kind of like the raw material, right? Let's say maybe you looked at the little specular or highlight that's on here, and you think to yourself, it's too much. Maybe it started off like this. Since you've got the specular layer, you can bring the shininess out. You can bring that down to make it like that. Maybe make it very dull, or you can bring it up and make it shinier again. right? So you have all of this control to affect the final results. Of course, within the tool itself, within the After Effects or the compositor, you have ways of affecting the look, right? So you can use the various different tools to affect, what we're bringing out more. Another really neat thing that I'll show. Let's do it here. Now in this example, I actually used PNGs, and the reason why I did that is in case some of you are using a video editor or a compositor that doesn't support RPF, so you're still wondering how to go about working with these. But let's say, like, you look at this and you thought, well, let's see, I think I'd like there to be some depth of field in this. So you can take this whole stack, and in After Effects, I'm going to do this. I'm going to come all the way down here, and I'm going to do what they call pre-compose. So I'm going to actually make one single layer out of all of these. Pre-compose, I'm calling this test. But anyway, it brings them all down to this. Layers turned off. But anyways, you look at this, now that I've got this here, I can bring the depth path. Okay, I've already got this. So I'm just going to activate the depth path, but didn't really need to do that. Let's see, I need to come to the pre-comp. I need to then go here and bring up you would do that with PNGs. That's just right. It would be lens blur. Sorry. And now with lens blur, notice immediately this gets blurred out like that. And you notice the edges gets a little weird. I was just trying to hide it there. But anyway, you can resize this to do away with what's happening to the edges. But anyway, the focus here, notice it's blurred, right? So what we can do is we can go to Depth Matte Layer, and then select the depth map, right? So if we do that, notice after a little bit here, notice now the very most foreground item is in focus, and then we kind of transition to being more and more blurred. If we take a look at the depth map, you notice that what's black is going to be clear by default with the settings that's in this effect also. What's black would be in focus, and then as you get more and more towards white, it gets more and more blurred out. What's also cool about the depth map is it can also be used in some scenes when you want to simulate fog. You just bring this in as a fog layer. But anyway, something to think about. You look at this, and there's various different ways to use this, even in this effect. So notice here it's showing this guy being focused. Now there is a blur focal distance, and we can play with that and change really what's in focus. So we could take this, bring this number up, and you'll notice that this item in the front becomes more blurred. And now if you look closely, the yellow ball is actually more in focus, while the focal distance is set to this 119. And don't ask me what the values equate to. I don't know what the units here are. But anyway, you start moving this more and more to higher values. You notice as I was moving further back. You'll notice right now, if I keep going up higher, notice this crack is still blurred between the walls. Now if I go high enough, I'll get back to those where it's not so blurred, where that's becoming more and more in focus, and the items in the foreground, all the balls become more blurred, right? So I'm probably really kind of there now. If I go too far, yeah, I was probably pretty close to it when I was at 200. But you get the idea. So you get a chance to kind of play with that, which is kind of neat, right? So another way to affect the final appearance, right? So you know how if you try to render out depth of field in Carrara, it renders extremely slow. So this is one way to get something that's pretty effective. I do happen to like depth of field better, at least the controls I have in the RPFs a little better, but I just wanted to show this real quick. If you're interested in it, I could spend time showing that in another tutorial. I just realized this one's getting to be kind of long, so hopefully you've got what you're asking for out of this doo-doo. I didn't want to say that name because I wasn't sure if that's how you pronounce it, but that's how it phonetically would come out, right? So anyway, I hope that I answered your question. Hopefully this was beneficial for you as well as others watching. This is Cyborg Ty. Thanks for watching.